I wrote this book because I had found something which was quite extraordinary that was going on in a range of developing countries, India, Africa, China, and I wanted the world to know that the poor are sending their children to private schools, low-cost private schools, that outperform the government schools at a fraction of the cost. That was exciting to me. I wanted everyone to know about it.
And when you wrote the book, how was the reaction?
The reaction has been mixed. So, as expected, there have been many academics, many people who have not liked the book and have said you mustn't read it, and said this is a waste of time and so on. But very positively, some in the aid industry, the development agencies, are becoming very excited by this book. So the British aid agency DFID, for instance, I know they've been recommending their education advisors to read this book. Many academics in development in America have got in touch with me and said this book is recommended reading on their Masters in Development Studies and so on. So there's a mixed reaction, but on the whole, I think it's been very, very positive. Before I wrote this book and before my teams did the research and started publishing the research, it had almost universally been assumed that if you're poor, you had two choices for school. That was either the local public school, the government school, or you couldn't go to school at all. And we started showing here, in this book, I start showing that there's a third choice, these low-cost private schools. And parents are embracing this wholeheartedly. So we've now illustrated this is possible, and we've got to now start discussing, okay, so before we thought about aid, just for government schools, just for public education, international agencies just in working in public education. Now perhaps they can start thinking, okay, and it's in urban areas, it's a majority of the poor are sending their children to these low-cost private schools. Well, why are we not thinking of them as partners for development? Why are we not thinking about these schools as partners for education for all? So let's discuss it. But there's something different going on from what everyone previously believed.
What kind of change it would make in development aid?
Well, development aid at the moment goes more or less completely into public education, and not me, but others, many have commented on how it gets wasted. Maybe it gets lost in the system, gets lost through corruption, it doesn't go to its source, and even if it does go to where it's needed, teachers are not necessarily working as hard in the public sector as they might be in these countries. So if development aid was channeled very, very sensitively towards this market in education, for example, by trying to make the market work better, by creating loan companies, loan projects for these schools so they could borrow, perhaps on low interest rates, to improve their infrastructure, perhaps helping create chains of these schools, creating investment opportunities, maybe scholarships, vouchers for the poorest of the poor to help them attend these schools as well. You can do a lot of imaginative things. It could improve this sector. Aid could also ruin this sector. You have to be very, very careful. You could come in with a heavy-handed aid and convert it all into more or less the same as public schools. So you've got to be very, very careful, but it could improve the sector, certainly, and help give a fourth choice. I've said three choices: no school, public school, low-cost private school. You could have improved low-cost private schools. That would also be great.
For government schools, is this a threat?
Some people could see this as a threat for government schools. So in the book, I'm quite clear. I do take to task public schools and the way they perform and the way teachers within them behave and the way the whole education establishment behaves. That's absolutely clear. But then most of the book ignores that and says, okay, there is this amazing movement going on of low-cost private schools How can we work with them? How can we help them improve? How can we celebrate what they've achieved already and help them take it even further? And in a sense, to me, I don't think about the government sector anymore. I know many people are working to help improve public schools. I know many in aid agencies and academia and so on are helping to improve it. I'm happy that they continue their work as long as I'm free to continue this work and we're free to focus on this movement. So it doesn't have to be a threat. If public education improves dramatically, then likewise these schools, they will be threatened. But in a sense, over the decades, people have been trying to improve public education in many of the countries I'm talking about, and it hasn't really been very successful.
Why should government sector read your book?
I'd like those in government to read my book, to recognise, first of all, that they don't have a monopoly of interest in education. What the book shows is that amongst poor families across the developing world, parents are really excited about education, want the best for their children. Entrepreneurs are setting up these low-cost private schools. I want those in government to know that too.
If we think of what kind of revolution low-cost private schools could be, I think what people think about the threat also that the private sector and greedy companies will come into education, and that's in a way some kind of sacred area. So what would you say to those people?
So those who say it's a sacred area and it should be left to the public system, you've only got to look at how badly that is doing in the countries I'm working in. So there's nothing sacred about the way the public sector deals with education. Let's get rid of that conception straight away. So would it be worse if the private sector had free rein and if companies and others started coming in? Companies will bring two major advantages, won't they? They can bring investment, and what everyone's saying is the sector is crying out for investment. Companies can bring that, and investment can improve infrastructure, it can improve technology, it can improve curriculum, all the things that are required to make the schools better, safer, more congenial for girls, for example, infrastructure development, separate toilets for boys and girls. These are things that investors can bring, that having companies can bring. Then it can bring in new minds, if you like, bright young things coming in with new ideas, new ways of working in education, new innovations. That will also have a great effect on improving educational opportunities for the poor. So I'm not at all worried about companies coming in. The government alternative is not working. Let's bring in investment and new ideas. But to me, perhaps the most exciting thing in the book is this, or the one message I would want people to get from the book. It's a celebration. It's a celebration of what poor families, poor entrepreneurs are doing already. Nothing in the book, nothing in the movement depends on you or me or the UN or the World Bank getting involved. This is very much a movement that's happening in spite of us. If we want to get involved to move it along a little bit better, that's great. But remember, the book is celebrating an existing movement, an existing grassroots movement.